Tonight, I want to talk about a case that I first heard about when I was a child. I couldn't have told you every name all these years later, but I remembered the woman. I remembered that she was pregnant. I remembered the vending machine. And as I started looking into her story again, other pieces started coming back. Her name is Jane Borowski. And in August 1988, Jane was 22 years old and 7 months pregnant. She was driving home from the Cheshire County Fair when she stopped to get a drink from a vending machine. This part I remembered. It was such an ordinary decision, but another vehicle arrived. A man approached Jane, and what happened next is almost unimaginable. Jane was attacked and stabbed 27 times. But she survived, and so did her unborn daughter. Jane's attack would eventually become associated with a collection of unsolved murders commonly referred to as the Connecticut River Valley Killings. And for decades, people have asked, did Jane Borowski survive an unidentified serial killer? But tonight, I want to ask a slightly different question. Can we actually prove that there was one Connecticut River Valley killer? Because this is where true crime and the law sometimes look at the same story differently. When we hear about multiple women being murdered within a geographic area, especially when there are similarities between the crimes, it's natural to look for connections. The similarities aren't necessarily proof. Different offenders can use the same type of weapon. Different offenders can target similar victims. And crimes committed in the same general region aren't automatically connected. So investigators have to look deeper. Is there physical evidence connecting the crimes? DNA, forensic evidence, a consistent method, witness testimony? Does the timeline make sense? And just as importantly, what evidence doesn't fit? Have any of you heard of the Connecticut River Valley Killings? And do you remember Jane Borowski's story? Because this is actually where my own childhood memory of this case gets interesting. I remember watching this story when I was around 8 years old. The image that stayed with me was Jane being very pregnant and stopping to get a soda from a vending machine. And I now know why. I think I know why. There was a grocery store where I grew up that had a similar setup with vending machines outside. So my 8-year-old brain may have connected what I was watching to something familiar. More than 3 decades later, I had forgotten some of the names, but I remembered that scene. And now, researching it again, even more details have started coming back. Let's look at the timeline. The earliest case commonly associated with these killings dates back to 1978. Over the following years, multiple women were found murdered in New Hampshire and Vermont. Some had been stabbed. Some of the cases occurred within the same general region. And then we get to 1986. Within just 10 days that April, 3 women associated with a group of cases were discovered dead. Then in 1987, Barbara Agnew was found murdered. And in 1988, Jane was attacked, except this time the victim lived. And this is the question that fascinates people. If Jane's attacker really was responsible for some or all of the earlier murders, why did the apparent series stop? Did he know he had left behind a witness? Did he leave the area? Did he die? Was he incarcerated for something unrelated? Or are we starting with the wrong assumption? What if Jane's attacker wasn't responsible for the earlier murders? What if only some of these crimes were connected? What if there was more than one killer? I want to know what you think. If a suspected series of murders appears to stop immediately after someone survives an attack, how much significance would you give that? Coincidence or potentially important? Over the years, different names have entered the conversation. One frequently discussed possible suspect is Michael Nicolau, a Vietnam veteran. There have been discussions surrounding vehicles and whether a wood-paneled vehicle associated with him resembled the type of vehicle Jane described. But I want to be extremely careful here. Being discussed as a possible suspect is not evidence of guilt, nor can it be used to convict someone beyond a reasonable doubt. Nicolau was never convicted of attacking Jane. He was never convicted of the Connecticut River Valley killings. And that's something I think true crime has a responsibility to remember. We can discuss theories, we can examine evidence, but we shouldn't turn theories into facts simply because they've been repeated for years. So here is tonight's gavel question. Are we asking the wrong question when we ask, who was the Connecticut River Valley killer? Should the first question actually be, was there one killer responsible for all these crimes? And if Jane really did survive the person responsible for some or all of these murders, did her survival change everything? Tell me what you think below. And if you want me to do a deep dive into Jane's story, the individual cases, and the evidence that may or may not connect them, let me know. I would love to. I'm Buffy. This is Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion, because these aren't just mysteries. There are victims, there are survivors, and there are still families waiting for answers, and they deserve the truth. Thank you for tuning in to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. My name is Buffy. I'm an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney. And if you got value in this, please feel free to like and subscribe. And also know that I have deep dives on YouTube, Recovering Perfectionist Mama, which is a psychology channel. The second one is Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion, which is a true crime channel. As I've said, I'm an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.